All right, guys, what's up? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. So now that the play session is over for XDefiant, I wanted to give as much brief of thoughts and my experiences with this game as possible, and in terms of where I stand. And I'll try to be as brief as possible while being informative as possible, because I've already done a handful of takes on this, and the recording ended up being way too long. So I'm going to try to yet again condense it into something shorter. So without further ado, what are my thoughts on XDefiant after all this time playing it? Now, how much time have I put into this game? I have put over 20 hours into it, and over 20 hours worth of gameplay recorded, both good, bad, and ugly, so to speak. And I've had my ups and downs, and I made it to level 39 just before the test session ended. And I've seen plenty of videos, I've watched plenty of streams, and I want to tell you right now is that all the opinions that you've seen that are not coming from a place of hate, that are just coming from a place of, hey, this was my experience and this is what I think, so to speak, right? Everything that you've heard, both positive and negative about this game, is true, except for one thing, in my opinion. And that is skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM. In my humble opinion, I'm just going to briefly say, and I'll make a separate video about this, I'm going to briefly say that I don't think that there is skill-based matchmaking in this game. Period. Simple as that. And again, I'll be making a separate video on that because I could easily go off on a tangent that could take 10 minutes. So I'd rather make a separate video about that. Now, in terms of my experience, now the majority of problems that come with XDefiant are rooted into two things. Number one is the server issues. There's desync going on. There's inconsistencies with the ping. Although after day one, my average ping went from a 75, for instance, to like a 45. So it was a lot more stable in days 2 and 3. Thank God. Because if you pair a higher ping in a match along with the desync issues that this game has and some of the other, hit registration issues and all that kind of stuff that all revolve around desync, well, yeah, of course, it's going to amplify all the BS that goes on, and it could really ruin your experience. And of course, you've also got the bad spawns that are in the game that that need to be ironed out as well. But other than that, I have to say that this game also has this amazing feeling of when you do get your kill and when you adjust your settings to where the controller feels better and the game feels less clunky, because it's another thing I've been reading and hearing is that the game feels clunky, etc., etc. You're gonna have to do a few things in your settings to kind of adjust that to kind of improve your experience. And yes, the game does not feel as smooth as a Call of Duty, right? The game doesn't feel as smooth as a Titanfall 2, all right? It has its own feeling to it, but is it smooth enough? Yes, because I personally have found enjoyment into this game, and at the same time I've also found frustration. But the frustration usually lies in the form of two things: the bad spawns and of course the desync / connection issues. And for the most part, that is it. I am not going to complain that this game is sweaty, despite the fact that I've already mentioned that I don't believe that there's skill-based matchmaking in this game. I don't mind the fact that it is sweaty because, number one, I expected it, and number two, I've already made another video talking about how, in general, the way gamers are nowadays, right? But number three, a lot of casuals still, I don't think a lot of casuals knew about this playtest, especially since it was shorter. So you pair all those things together, who do you got playing this game that are a significant portion of the population? You got a lot of streamers, you got a lot of small and big content creators, and just in general, sweats. Even if they don't do content creation, you got sweats out there, and you can tell. Chances are you've been playing games like this long enough, and you can tell when somebody is sweating their ass off, but that's just their default setting. And a lot of people are aware of how to play these types of games now. Arcade arena shooters are nothing new in the space, so everybody's a lot more familiar. Okay, so let's just be real here. Okay, so and at the same time, again, all of us are learning the game, and we all learn at different paces. So someone like me, it usually takes me to something that's new like this. I mean, it's familiar, but at the same time new because of the map design, and then of course all the problems that this game has, and a few things that I haven't been as experienced with in terms of specifics that this game offers. I'm still, despite the fact that I played the shit out of it, I'm still going through the learning phase, right? And I'm a slow learner than your average folks when it comes to this. But eventually, when things click and when these issues, hopefully, fingers crossed, get resolved, it'll be a much better experience. But I don't think anybody should ever judge a game, whether it's good or bad, based off of how well they do in game. I'm just going to say that right off the bat right here, even though I'm in a few minutes into this video. I'm well into this video. One thing that I want to mention in parentheses and in bold caps, respectfully speaking, is that you should never ever judge a game based off of how well you do or how how bad you do, right? So if you do bad, the game sucks? No. You doing bad in a game has nothing to do with the game sucking. So that is my thing that I stand on, you know? I very much realize that I have a lot to learn with this game, but despite all the frustrations, despite all the sweat, I still managed to have fun with this game, which is a good sign. It basically points to the fact that it's basically evidence for me personally that there's a good a good game underneath all of this, you know, all these problems, so to speak, right? But here is the big elephant in the room, guys. It's been 9 months since the last time we played this game, and it still feels very much like the same game, just a minor few changes here and there. And literally the inconsistencies can go from gunfight to gunfight in terms of sometimes it feels like you could be right next to somebody and then they're going to die super slow and it takes an entire clip to kill them. And at the same time, they hit you with 2 bullets, you're dead, regardless of distance, right? There's, you know, things like delays, you're being shot around walls, you know, sniping is ridiculous. But at the same time, you know, I think snipers have a lot to look forward to in this game. So overall, it's a good thing. And obviously, if you have a game that's 150 in health, of course, you know, we've experienced it in Black Ops Cold War, and we've experienced it in Black Ops 4 in terms of how sniping is with that game. So basically the best thing you can do is once you know that somebody's, you know, got their snipes on you, just do not even attempt to take them out. Just get under cover. And the game does a good job of telling you if a sniper is ADSing on you because of the glare that comes from the scope. But anyway, overall, the game still managed to have the fun factor. It feels very, very fun to be able to take somebody out, right? Whether they're in full health or whether they're in low health, it's a really satisfying feeling to like take somebody out in this game. And that is one of the addictive factors that will make people come back. However, I will say that there are additional things that this game needs before it launches, in my opinion. Obviously, these desync issues, and we need some stability in the connection as well. Those things, as well as the hit registration and the things that are not lining up right. Exclusive Ace made a video and he went a little bit more specific. Even though he didn't have much data to go off of, he was very specific in terms of the problems, and it made absolute sense in accordance with what I experienced as well. So there's a few things that need to be straightened out, as well as a desync and stuff like that. And I don't know how long it's going to take, because it's taken 9 months to get us here, and it feels like we've hardly gone anywhere. You know, there's only been like minor changes. And again, at the same time, there are some people that have experienced a lot of similar things that I have. But there's also been a few differences here and there. Some people have actually reported that the desync for them is not as bad and their connection is not as bad or whatnot. But for the majority of people, from what I've seen, that seems to be the problem. But it also depends on so many different factors, like what your internet connection is, as well as where you live in terms of where the servers are, how close you are to the server, which obviously makes a difference. And of course, the instabilities that come with that. That's more of a developer question more than anything. But the fact that the game managed to, despite its imbalances here and there, despite all the problems, it still manages to keep its fun factor, and it manages to keep the interest of the population. Now, despite all that, I have to say that this game needs to release with a certain few things. And that is obviously, number one, that these issues with the desync and the servers or whatnot need to be ironed out first and foremost. No questions asked, number one. And I have no idea how long that's going to take, because again, it's been 9 months. So what have they been doing behind the scenes? I'm pretty sure there's some stuff that we don't know that Mark Rubin himself can't even disclose. And that's all I'm going to say about that. You guys can take that what you will, as you will. But we also don't need to make the same mistakes that ended up losing a vast majority of the population of other games out there, such as Halo Infinite, that didn't release with a team deathmatch or a team slayer for the first 3 weeks, and the fact that the game itself had lack of content, like a lot of lack of content. And just like Halo Infinite with its population, with a game like XDefiant within its population in the arcade shooter genre, there are certain things that this type of genre needs from the get-go at launch that simply this game is not planning to have at launch, and I think it is a huge mistake. Team Deathmatch needs to be in this game. No questions asked about that. At launch. Period. Obviously, the server and desync issues need to be fixed. No questions asked. Period. Things like kill cams, button mapping, a prestige progression mode, ranked mode, all that kind of stuff. need to be there at launch. Button mapping, kill cams, all of that needs to be there at launch. And the first 6 weeks are going to be very crucial. And as of right now, the amount of content that we have with this game, for a lot of players out there, and again, I'm not one of these players because I could play in this game's current state for like, you know, as long as it needs to take until they update it or whatnot. But I think it's going to be a much slower process if they rush to release the game out now versus waiting a few months, in my opinion. Because there are certain things that need their full time and attention. Because when you release a game, what ends up happening is you're dividing your attention between the issues that you already had prior to launch. And on top of that, you've got work to do to release for when the game, you know, for the game season that are upcoming, right? Because content is important. If content wasn't important, they wouldn't have the seasons. If content wasn't important, they wouldn't say and mention on Twitter that there's already been 10 plus maps and God knows how many modes and guns that we have yet to see, and factions as well. So, and of course, another game mode that is planning on releasing afterwards is a search and destroy. And of course, it's also been mentioned that a bare bones mode without the factions, which are kind of like heroes or specialists or however you want to compare them to, is planning on being released. So that's a good thing as well. But yeah, I think certain things within this game need to be ironed out, and certain pieces of content and features need to be in the game before it's even considered to release, or I fear it's going to suffer the same, if not a similar fate that Halo Infinite has experienced. And speaking of which, when that game released, it had a lot of lack of content, and it took them about 1.5 years for them to release the content that the game does now. And last month, guess what? Last month, literally in March of last month, was when they finally fixed the desync issues that Halo Infinite had that people were complaining about. It took them that long. And why do I think it took them that long? It took them that long because they were also focusing on fixing the issues that the game had ever since before it launched. Because they had to launch, they were already delayed for a year, but they obviously forced the launch anyway, and then the game ended up being behind for such a long time, like over a year, like 1.5 years, before there was finally momentum. So I don't want this game to suffer the same fate. I don't want the game to lose 70% of its player base within the first 6 weeks. I don't want that to happen. I'm looking at the long run. I'm not looking at now. Some of the content creators want the game to release now because they think in the long run that will be better for the game. And I respectfully disagree because of what has happened with Halo Infinite. And I'm not a developer, and it doesn't take a genius to realize that, but that's where I stand. I think the concentration needs to be put on a few pieces of features and content, as well as a desync fix now before the game launches, so that way we don't have to worry about that at launch, and we can just worry about additional content and additional things that people will address when the game releases. Because when the game does release, there's gonna be things that are going to be needing addressed, whether it's spawns, whether it's weapon balance, whether it's ideas for future game modes or whatnot, and any other problems that will arise when the game releases. Because there's not a game out there, no matter how polished it is, that doesn't have these kind of problems post-launch, especially if it's a multiplayer game. So there are certain problems that need to be fixed before this game even launches. I've said that a handful of times already in this video, and that is where I stand. I think it's better to wait a few more months or however long it takes to have all these things settled before the game launches. And we've already proven that despite the fact that there's already been a 9-month delay since the last time we played this game, that guess what? We had 48 hours, well, 54 hours to play this game, and guess what? All of a sudden, the population remembers this game again. All of a sudden, streamers and content creators, etc., are hyped, and they brought back the hype and attention to this game. And even if things were to delay for the better of the game from now, right? If we get another delay of some kind that is going to ultimately end up for the better of the game, guess what? I guarantee you, well, I can't guarantee you anything because there's no guarantees in life, but I can say that the chances are high that the population will come back again and the hype will come back again. And that's where I stand. Fix these issues first, add a few bits and pieces of content and features, then release. Do not rush to release, or else you're going to suffer a similar fate as Halo Infinite, and I do not want that for this game. I want this game to last. I want this game to have 6 figures of people, like 100,000 people or more playing the game on any given time, as opposed to 6 weeks later dropping 70%. Because Halo Infinite on Steam had about 250,000 for the first 6 months or so, or 2 months. And guess what? Right now on Steam alone, you're talking anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 on average, or somewhere around there, and a little bit more on weekends. And then you put console into that, you're looking at about 35,000, which is a hell of a lot less than what it once once was when the game launched. And I do not want that for this game. So anyway, with that being said, guys, I'm going to end it here. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I like to thank you for taking the time to watch and or listen. And let me know your opinions down below, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.